All right, so top 5 NFL storylines from Super Bowl Monday. One of these has to do with the Super Bowl. The rest are tangential around the league, but we haven't gotten to talk about them today, so wanted to get your opinion on some of these, Smokey, and talk about them. Number 5, Ejiro Evero, the very highly thought of defensive coordinator who interviewed for a bunch of head coaching jobs, staying on with Dave Canales and the Panthers as the defensive coordinator. That is maybe the most hotly regarded quarterback coach in Canales,
right,
and one of the most hotly coveted young defensive coordinators in the league, together on a staff now with an owner that is pretty nuts. But sometimes even crazy people can find themselves in a good situation. The only question I have about the Panthers is David Tepper has this really interesting, intriguing young coaching staff. Can he stay out of their way?
Probably not. You hope that he'd learn, because his team sucks. His franchise is a joke based on some of the things. And then he's hired and fired coaches like, who's the lady that got divorced about 20 different times?
Like Liz Taylor?
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what he's done. And so, but will he change? You hope so. Otherwise, he's going to get lucky. I don't know. I think Bryce Young's still a pretty good player. I do like what he does. But as far as if you can keep your young assistants, coordinators with you, that sure doesn't hurt. That I love stability. That's a big deal for me.
Especially with Brian Burns, their fantastic defensive end, who went to Florida State, by the way. But Brian Burns coming up here where he's going to be in a contract negotiation. If you want to have he's a cornerstone-type player on defense, that's a good one to have. Number 4, this is interesting. This is actually more of a college note, but it means the Patriots don't have a coach that was on their staff. Steve Belichick, who was calling the plays for the defense last year for New England and his father's last year, on his way to UW. He's going to be with the Huskies and Jed Fish as their
was there someone else
coordinator
prior to when he decided that's where he's going to go, where he was linked to Belichick?
I don't.
For some reason, want to think it might have been in California.
I think there was some potential for him with another NFL team, but it might have been the Rams. I think it might have been the Rams.
Okay, that might have been it.
But Steve Belichick to UW and brings that name to Jed Fish's staff. Kind of interesting that a guy who's never recruited too is going to jump in and go there, because he's always been there, grown up through the Patriots.
Yeah, he's been pro football, pretty much just completely in his blood.
But I guess your recruiting pitch is like, hi,
you know what recruiting
I'm
is?
Steve Belichick.
That guy can play.
Yeah.
That's my position, or that's my region to coach or to recruit. I'm getting him.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can learn that pretty quickly.
Yeah. Number 3, my favorite story of the day, LeVeon Bell, 32 years old, former NFL running back, is trying to take the former out of his title. He is attempting a comeback.
Yeah,
he's hoping.
I don't like this with running backs.
He's hoping that he can run it back with the Steelers, because I don't think he probably has some guilt about the way that ended, which was insane.
When he had that slide to him, that unbelievable patience, and then he just disappeared. Yeah. I don't know about running backs.
I mean, coming back for that position.
What's it been, a couple of years now?
Yeah, he was out in 2021 was the last he played.
3 football seasons.
Yeah.
You think of that, you go, well, maybe he's got some of the bumps and bruises. I think once you've already had him, and he didn't play that long, but I think there's a certain precision of being at that level and all of a sudden trying to come back. It's like boxers who try to come out of retirement, and they've been out maybe for a year. Hey, good for him. If he makes it, great. But I don't like the odds here.
All right. Number 2, Kyle Shanahan finally copped to it. And he did it in an interview with Peter King. It's always been kind of danced around when it came to this offseason. Look, they knew that they were going to trade Trey Lance. They knew that was going to happen. They knew that, but they didn't know what the status of Brock Purdy was going to be, because he had an elbow injury in the NFC Championship game. So literally at the second to last latest point in the season where he could have a season-ending injury, he had it. The only way it could have been worse is when Odell Beckham Jr. hurt himself in the Super Bowl.
Right.
But there's only one worse scenario for that as far as recovery timeline. And they were fortunate to find out that Brock Purdy was not in any kind of imminent danger when he had his surgery, that it was the lesser of what it could have been. But you've got a guy with an elbow, the same injury that Brock Purdy had would keep Jacob deGrom out for an entire season. So those things you have to worry about when you're talking about a guy who throws. But he did admit that, yes, he made a push for the organization to sign Tom Brady this last offseason. And if you know anything about the history of young Tom Brady was a 49ers fan. He grew up in Northern California, crazy big 49ers fan. And that's where I thought he was going to go when he left the Patriots. I thought that was before he went over the Bucs. I was like, oh, he's just going to go play for the 49ers. And, you know, a lot of people don't have the juice to just call up your hometown team and go, hey, I'm playing for you now.
Right.
But Tom Brady does. You know,
Tom Brady, when Tom Brady calls, you pick up the phone.
Look,
I just said I don't like people holding out for too many years. That might be one of the few positions maybe where you could do that.
Look, and had he played this year for somebody, nobody would have really been that surprised, and he'd probably been fine. But yeah, he did want Tom Brady, which I think would have been interesting, which really they could have found themselves right here back in this game with Tom Brady, especially with all the weapons and things they have around him. But it ultimately didn't come to that. But it was interesting that Kyle Shanahan finally, after kind of dancing around it, because it's a weird thing to get into, you know, especially when Purdy has so many doubters. But that he did cop to it today in an interview.
There's nothing wrong with looking
King.
for a guy that, in case your guy who you've committed to is not going to be able to make it.
Yeah.
All right.
Number one.
Yep.
Number one, we have not talked about this today, but Kliff Kingsbury is the new offensive coordinator for the Commanders. The defensive coordinator, and this also comes, you know, when the Cowboys lost Dan Quinn.
By the way, they fired Bieniemy.
Yeah.
That's actually, they didn't, because he apparently had years left, right? Because he only,
Yeah, so Eric Bieniemy's gone. Kliff Kingsbury is there. Also, Joe Witt Jr. and now becomes the defensive coordinator under Dan Quinn. He leaves from the Cowboys.
That's official?
That's official. He's there, so that does affect the Cowboys. Although, even though Jerry said he was going to interview Joe Witt Jr., I really feel like he wasn't ever going to do that. He was. I don't think he ever really intended on it. It appears that Ron Rivera and Mike Zimmer, who we just talked about with Anderson Dejo, are that. But your thoughts on Kliffy?
Yeah, I don't mean this to be negative because I like him. He's a great dude. He really is. But I like him right now as a non-head coach. And I'm not saying he couldn't be successful, but I think that he's building a pretty nice, deep resume as USC, where he's been. And I think another year or two. Listen, if you can win in Washington, you're going to get noticed.
Yeah.
Right? The guy who's got the job there.
Well, it took a team to the Super Bowl.
Yes.
And if not for that rascally Tom Brady.
Yes. Yeah. And also, how long had it been since he was with the Falcons? Goes to Dallas. He kind of resurrects. Maybe if you're not, he'd taken a team to a Super Bowl. It was so close. So I like this for Kliff. I think another year or two as a coordinator, and maybe he'll get that chance again. And maybe he might just end up being a lifelong offensive coordinator. And there's nothing wrong with that.
No, there's a lot of people. Look, Steve Spagnuolo was a head coach for a little while, and now he's the best defensive coordinator in football.
Yes.
He's found his niche. Sometimes, that's where you are. He's making a lot of money, and it's great. I think it'll be interesting to see for the NFC East to deal with Kliff Kingsbury calling those plays.
Depending on who they get the quarterback, is it going to be Caleb Williams, Drake May? Is it still part of Sam Howell? What?
So the offenses that the Cowboys will face now are Kliff Kingsbury,
wide open.
Kellen Moore,
wide open. That's right.
And Brian Daboll, who is very creative.
Yeah.
I'll say that. He's very creative. He's very creative. I think Brian Daboll is one of the best football minds.
That's an Alabama guy, right?
He's one of the best football minds in the league. I don't think he's been given the full menu to work with. The Giants feel to me like a team that you ever go to a restaurant like right when they open, they're like, listen, we're going to have this eventually, but right now we have this on the menu.
Right.
That's kind of what the Giants are. They haven't gotten their full menu yet. But Kliff Kingsbury, the Commanders, I think is a really interesting and intriguing move. And should the Bears decide not to draft Caleb Williams, he's going to be reunited with him.
No, you're right. There's a possibility.
Or if the Commanders decide to, go up and.
Don't. Why?
No.
Yeah. If you have the number 2 pick and you've got Williams, who I know is, very, and you have why?
And Drake May and Jaden Daniels.
If anything, you could trade down. If you get more, don't do too much. You're going to get a quarterback at 2 if that's what you want to get.
Let somebody else get drunk and go trade up for Caleb Williams.
Absolutely.
That's what I say.
All right.
That's it.
All right. One other final college football note that's popping. Remember the